So, can the Nashville Predators actually make the postseason? Some national media outlets say no. Today, we'll tell you where their arguments hit and where they may fall short.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are, of course, your free daily Nashville Predators podcast. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off our Friday episode shouting out our Locked On Predators insiders and, of course, our everydayers who tune in to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. I'm Ann Kimmel. I am a writer and co-host with Penalty Box Radio, and friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Emma Lingan, and I'm an NHL reporter and host for the Hockey News.
Well, on yesterday's show, we shared how some of our Locked On Predators insiders were feeling about this team's chance to make the postseason. Today, we're going to see what The Athletic had to say about Nashville's opportunities for the playoffs. We'll tell you where the Predators fall in their ranking and what we think they got right and what maybe they're going to get wrong. Also, it is Friday. That means it is Look Forward Friday. Emma and I are going to share some things that we are looking forward to this weekend. Before we dive into all of that, we do want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All right, Emma, yesterday we shared some of our Locked On Predators insiders community's thoughts on Nashville's potential. And I thought this might be a really good time for us to remind people, hey, if you are interested in being a Locked On Predators insider, you can join us via subtext. There'll be information in the link to this episode in the show notes as well. But it's just an opportunity via subtext to text with Emma and I to share your thoughts about the games. We, of course, always summarize games with one word to describe the game, and we lean on our insiders for that. But we also just like having some conversation about the Predators and sometimes life and musical theater. So if you're interested, check out that information as well. I miss one words. I'm ready to get back to doing one word to describe a game. Like, you know, I feel like I might need to read a thesaurus to be totally prepared, Emma, but, you know, right around the corner.
Yeah, coming up with 82 different words is, it proves challenging, which is why more often than not, my word for last season was sure. Like nothing. I mean, last season was such a beatdown. Hoping for some more positive words this year. Words of affirmation, perhaps, but
Sure summed it up perfectly, though. You were not wrong anytime you used it.
Anything could have happened. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. We've seen it all. It's all unfurled. Yeah. So new season, maybe some new words, but it's interesting. The expectations very different from last season, which is something that we have talked about through the course of the off season. It's something we have heard from the players, from Barry Trotz, from Andrew Brunette going into the season. Yesterday, we shared some of our insiders' thoughts on this team's potential. Today, we're going to take a closer look at what The Athletic had to say. And here's just the big picture, hard truth that we're just going to slap down on the ugly table, friends. The Athletic has Nashville finishing 28th in the league in points with a whopping 78.6 points. They have them finishing ahead of the Blackhawks, the Sharks, the Penguins, and the Kraken. Emma, how painful is that to you to hear? And how accurate, just big picture, do you feel like that is?
So it's funny because at first when I saw 28th, I'm thinking in baseball terms. So I'm thinking out of 30. So I was like 28th out of 30. So I was like, so they have them finishing exactly where they did last year, third worst in the league. I'm like, I think they're going to improve a little bit over that. And then I realized, oh, this would be an improvement over that, because
That would
they would
be.
be finishing, slightly ahead of where they did last year. But no, I mean, kind of goes back to the whole, sure, honestly, last season was such a
Dumpster
just,
fire, hot
yes,
mess,
among other things,
excruciating
yes,
train wreck.
yes. And it went so sideways so quickly, and
It did.
so, against what any and all expectations were for it. So it's, it taught me, among a lot of things, I think it taught me to expect the unexpected.
Yeah.
And so going into this season, again, I'm like, they could finish exactly where they finished last year. They could finish slightly ahead. They could finish in a playoff spot. Honestly, none of these things would surprise me, because that's how wild last year was. And so
Mhm.
I like, at first I was like, well, come on, the Athletic. I mean, give them a little credit. I think they're going to be a little better. And it's like, oh, that is a little better
That
than
is a
where they
little
were
better.
last year.
It doesn't feel a little better, but it is. What is so interesting for us covering the team, here at local level, talking to the players, seeing the practices, and also what the national hockey media are seeing, one of the things that's very consistent is that it's hard to know. Because here's what's real, friends. We learned nothing last season. Do you know what we learned? Nothing. And it's not for lack of trying. We watched all 82 games, but when it comes to knowing for sure anything about this Predators roster, we finished 82 games of the regular season, and there was not one thing for sure I knew about the Nashville Predators. I don't know how the veterans are going to perform. I don't know if they are over the cliff, yodeling over the Price is Right cliff and not going to recover. I don't know if the young players are capable of moving this team forward. I don't know if Juuse Saros is going to bounce back. I don't know if Roman Josi is going to be healthy. Now, we have seen some things that give us hope. Roman Josi has talked pretty openly about feeling 100%. I think Juuse Saros, of what we have seen from him in preseason games, but also just in practice, he looks very settled in net, very calm in net. So that feels like a reset. There are assumptions you can make that would take you down two very different paths when you're talking about the future for this Predators team next season. You can assume that last year was the anomaly. You can assume that now that they know where the catch-up is, Stamkos and Marchessault are going to get back to producing the way you expect them to. You can assume that Roman Josi is 100% and will stay healthy. You can assume that Juuse Saros is back to his groove. That does take you down a path that makes you think so you're saying there's a chance. But then you can make some other assumptions. You can assume that those veterans are not going to be able to get back to their career averages. You can assume that Juuse Saros, because of his size, the league is adjusting to how to play against small goaltenders, and it's not going to get any better. You can assume that we are seeing the beginning of the downturn of Roman Josi. You can assume that the young players are not good enough to close the gap. And that takes you down a very dark road, friends. Takes you down a very, very dark road. So it's difficult whether you are here, boots on the ground, or whether you are the Athletic, to come out and say, here is what we know is going to happen in Nashville. And the Athletic, I think, was very forthcoming about saying, like, well, you know,
Sure.
sure. It was a
I
longer article than that, but really you can summarize it. Sure.
Sure. Yeah, no, I
Sure.
think, we went in with very high expectations last year. Everyone did. They fell extremely short of those expectations. And then, this year now I think the expectations for this team are so low after what last year looked like. So I think the reality is it's probably going to be somewhere in the middle, somewhere in between like amazing Stanley Cup or bust and, oh, they're going to finish third worst in the league again. I really do think it's going to be the reality of who this team is, probably somewhere in the middle. They're still a team in transition, whether they want to be or not. They are, if Barry had it his way, they would be, still, they would never rebuild. They would be competitive all the time. And you know what? That would be great. I would love to live in that fantasy world as well, but it just doesn't happen that way. Yeah. So I think that it is a team in transition. They're going to have some growing pains. They're going to struggle at times. They don't have a superstar center. They don't, there's a lot of things that they're lacking. But I do genuinely think that they are going to improve over last year. I don't think it's going to be another year
any worse.
That. Well, I don't think it can get any worse, but I also don't even think that it's going to be the same. I really do think they're going to be better. Playoffs, I don't know, but they'll be better.
Yeah. The Athletic went on to give best and worst case scenarios for the Nashville Predators and playoff percentages coming up. We're going to share those numbers with you and tell you how realistic we think that space is between best and worst case scenario. Today's episode is brought to you by our great friends at FanDuel. The NFL season is finally here, friends, and FanDuel is making sure you are ready for all those kickoffs with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you will get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. You're going to love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet, whether it's those player props, building a same-game parlay, or jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's going to make every game that much more exciting, whether you are watching your favorite team or just keeping up with your fantasy lineup. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That is FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, Emma, we talked about two roads diverge in a yellow wood, and the Athletic has numbers that go along with that. So I appreciate that. They say probably 78.6% is where they nail down the Predators when it comes to points for the season. Worst case scenario, 67 points, my friend. 67 points. Best case scenario, 92 points. Now, my question is, before we get into the how do they get both places, Emma, is 92 points going to get you a playoff spot this year?
In the East, it might. I don't know. In the Central, I really don't know. I mean, there are some wild card teams there. I mean, we talk about, obviously, you got Winnipeg, you got Dallas, you got Colorado. Let's just assume we're not touching those teams. But teams like St. Louis and Minnesota are very much wild cards, very much you don't really know what to expect from them. So that's where I think that there really is kind of some wiggle room there, but it not a lot. You can't bank on either of those teams missing the playoffs. So
yeah, I agree with you. I think in the West, you're going to need a whole heck of a lot of points if you want to be in the postseason conversation. Now, The Athletic, of course, breaks down the math, and they're mathing in their article. They talk about something called PDO, and basically, this is the Cliff Notes version, the Spark Notes. Apparently, they're called Spark Notes. The Spark Notes version of PDO, but PDO is shooting percentage, save percentage. And what that kind of gives you is a picture of how much is skill. And then it sort of gives you a mathematical factor for luck because the mean is 100 points. So over the long enough period of time, a team is going to land around 100 points. Last season, Nashville, a whopping 97.1. By the way, that was the third lowest mark in the league since 2007, 2008. Who says we didn't set records last season? So the upside is, from a mathematical perspective, the Predators are very likely to have a bounce back because the math surely is going to get better. The question that the Athletic wrestles with is what has to happen for it to be significant enough? And does this team have a roster that makes you think, wow, last year was a fluke, which I think a lot of ways was, but is that fluky roster actually good enough? And does it mesh well enough to become a roster that can compete for a playoff spot? And that's where the Athletic is like, I don't know about that, friends. I don't know about it. So they predict that the luck is going to improve. And if the sound of failure, Philip Forsberg hitting the crossbar, is any indication, it's got to get better this season. But they're not willing to say this is a roster that is Stanley Cup compatible. And Emma, I don't disagree with them because I look at, we talked about this yesterday. I always come back to Dallas. That to me looks like a Stanley Cup roster. Nashville ain't that. Nashville just ain't that.
No, and it's like all rosters and truly all Stanley Cup champions are not created equal. So you have, different things that can give you an edge, like I think, whether it's your goaltending carries you, whether it's your scoring, your center depth, your maybe you're a really, really strong top six now, and that's oversimplifying it. In reality, you're good at all of those things, but every team has weaknesses relative to one another. And so the problem is Nashville at their best is a pretty good team. And pretty good doesn't get you to the playoffs. And so again, as far as this year, and we talked about that on yesterday's show as well, that it's like, as far as the long-term outlook for this team, training camp has made me feel pretty good. The preseason has made me feel pretty good. I like what I'm seeing for the long term. But for this year, back to your earlier point, I have no earthly idea what to expect.
Yeah.
Because so much of it is going to hinge on how the veterans perform. Because again, you can talk all day about wanting to create opportunities for the young kids. But as I said on yesterday's show, Nashville isn't getting to the playoffs because Matthew Wood had a good season or because, like whoever, Ozzy Weisblatt had a good season. They're getting to the playoffs because Steven Stamkos and Philip Forsberg, etc., had a good season. And so you really kind of need to see that. And again, we still don't know. And preseason is not the time to really
figure that out.
Yeah. And so it's still very much like, okay,
Sure.
maybe. Sure.
Yeah, sure. The Athletic quantified chances of making the postseason, and they have Nashville with a 16% chance to make the postseason. This is a very different number than Nashville had last year, but here is what I will say, and you can pull different stats, and we've said this before, stats tell you the truth unless they're lying. But some of the things that make me feel better is that just the law of averages says it can't be that big of a dumpster fire back to back. But also when it comes to this team, last year, the Predators lost 22 games by 1 goal or 1 goal and a last minute empty netter. So if you can swing those close games, you change some things about what the Predators can do points wise. And so it's not even so much that the Nashville Predators have to make this dramatic, like Black Hawkian leap into the conversation. It's that if they can finish, 22 games that are close and turn that into 2 points instead of no points, it makes a difference. The problem is the teams that Nashville is going to be playing the most are going to be Central Division teams. And a lot of them are really good. I mean, Dallas, Colorado, Winnipeg. But I'm telling you, the Utah Mammoth, we talked about this in different episodes, St. Louis Blues, Minnesota Wild. Basically, even the Blackhawks could beat the Predators on the wrong day. So there are little things that could make a difference when it comes to the points, but the big picture is this is still a really brutal division for this team to compete in. And I think that's part of what the Athletic takes into consideration is, big picture. Where does this team fall? And it's not an easy day to be a Central Division team, friends. We've talked about that. It's just not fun. It's just not for us.
No. And, I think that kind of like you said, quite honestly, if you ask me why I think Nashville is going to have a better year than last year, it's truly law of averages. Like it can't possibly be that bad again. That's all I've got to go off of here. So even if, to your point about the Central Division, even if Nashville has a significantly better season than they did last year. Significant can mean different things to different people, but even if they are significantly better than last year, that still does not guarantee by any means a trip to the playoffs, because it would need to be Nashville needs to be significantly better, and then a team like Minnesota has got to be significantly worse. And or St. Louis or Winnipeg or Colorado, like who knows? But I think that Nashville is not in control of their own destiny in the Central Division as far as with this current roster. They're just not. And so, I mean, technically no one is. It's the beginning of the season, but still, I think that they already have an uphill battle, because it's not just about what did they have to do, it's what the other teams have to not do. And that's asking a lot of teams that we saw a lot of good things from last year. And really the only one that I don't see improving is Chicago. So that kind of, even if you're Nashville and you finish with more points than last season, you're still probably finishing second to last in the division. Unless, again, that relies on another team taking a tumble, but that's out of your control. So you really can't worry about that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this is an interesting season because A, we don't know much about this team. B, even if they're better, they may not be good enough for the postseason. And C, before you play one game, this team needs help from another team struggling in this division. That's just the way the cookie crumbles. Coming up, we'll tell you who the Athletic said has to perform well to help the Nashville Predators make some progress this season. Their answer might actually surprise you. All right, Emma, we can make a long list. It could be a whole episode of who needs to perform better for the Nashville Predators, friends, because just read the roster. Just read the roster. You can skip Philip Forsberg.
You can close your eyes and point at a name and you'll be correct. Like that's honestly, even Philip Forsberg could be better. Like if we're going to be technical about it, but honestly, just close your eyes and point and you'll be correct.
Yes, you will hit a player who needs to be better. I thought this was really interesting, though, as the Athletic went through and did their calculations, the shoulders on which the pressure fell is Juuse Saros. Now, not so surprised, but also, again, like you said, look around the room, look to the person to your left, look to the person to your right. That person needs to not suck this season. But so much of the pressure numerically falls on Juuse Saros, because the assumption is that the goals will probably come. Like the puck luck was atrocious. The shooting percentage was ridiculous. So just law of averages, that will come. So what do you need? you need really good goaltending. And that's something that falls solely on the lap of Juuse Saros. And it's really interesting, their comments, he has regressed over the last 2 seasons. And I know there are some people whose bowels are in an uproar over Juuse Saros and his contract. But Juuse Saros isn't dead yet, friends. So I think that there is a lot to be encouraged about when it's that guy who shoulders a lot of the numerical responsibility for increasing the numbers for the Predators. I feel more comfortable having this fall on Saros than I do on anyone else. And that includes Roman Josi, and that includes Steven Stamkos. Give me Saros. I'll bank on that guy.
I agree with you. I think, honestly, this is maybe a more negative take on why the blame, or not the blame, but why the pressure rests on Saros. It's probably because if you look at the Nashville Predators of years past, specifically even like the 2 seasons before, he bailed them out a lot. And he was the reason that they won a lot of games that they had no business winning. He was their best player. And now, granted, that was before they added these, these scoring weapons, such as they are, to in theory improve the offense. But like you said, the assumption is that those goals are going to come. The problem is Juuse Saros in the past has carried this team on his back, carried them to wins that they probably didn't deserve. Not all of their wins, but I'm just saying some of them, a good number of them. The fact that even he could not do that last year, he could not save them. He's just one man. He could not save this team from the dumpster fire that was last season. I think a lot of people look at him and say, and I mean, again, the numbers don't lie. Statistically, it was his worst season. That's a fact. But bad for Juuse Saros means he couldn't carry the entire team all on his own, all on his little 5'10" back. He couldn't do that. And so I think that is kind of the logic behind Saros needs to be better, is because like he was sort of the great equalizer for Nashville before last year. And last year he wasn't. And so I think that now, I'm not saying that the recipe to success is to solely have your goaltender stealing you games, but for Nashville, again, that's kind of your best bet. Like you said, that's the best bet. You can't really bet on aging veterans to have career years, like career scoring years. But I mean, Saros, time and time again, we've seen him do it. And I've said it before, I'm not at all worried about him. And I agree with you. It makes me feel better that he is the one who needs to improve. But I also think that so much of last season being his worst statistical season is because the team in front of him was atrocious. And he's only one guy. He can't stop everything. So I'm just hoping that they'll be able to play a better game in front of him, allow him to see some more pucks, and allow him to maybe steal them some more wins.
Yeah. I think Nashville has a history of seeing goaltenders steal games, and that goes back to Pekka Rinne. And Juuse Saros came in, and you saw him able to do that same thing relatively consistently until last season. And last season, the team in front of him was not good. The defense in front of him was not good. Now, there were also some pucks that he should have and normally would have saved. So there is kind of something that you've got to be watching for Saros. But if Juuse Saros can be a top 5 goaltender in this league, that is going to go so much further for this team's success than if Roman Josi is a top 5 defenseman or Philip Forsberg is a top 5 right winger for this team. And Juuse Saros, a man of few words, friends, man of few words, but he doesn't have to say much to make you think this is a guy that can handle that. So a lot about who is Nashville going to be this season, a lot of it numerically, and I think also just psychologically is going to fall on Juuse Saros in net. So we're going to be keeping our eye on Juuse. Probably not going to have long, detailed conversations with him, but we will be keeping our eye on him because I do think he could be the swing factor for the team. Again, can he single-handedly get this team into the postseason? Probably not in this Central Division. But can he help this team be more competitive? I think he's your X factor for that. Of course, it is Friday. And Emma and I are kicking off this season, Look Forward Friday, where we talk about something hockey or life-related that we are looking forward to this weekend. So, Emma, what you looking forward to this Friday?
Well, unhockey related, that's not a word, but I just made it one.
Yep.
I am very excited because Saturday morning, tomorrow morning, I'm getting a facial.
Let's go.
And I'm getting my brows done. I'm getting my eyelashes done. It's going to be a whole morning, which is going to be my nice. Now, unfortunately, I will have to go straight from said facial to work for 6 hours, but I'm still very excited to
You're
have
gonna
my
look
me time
so
in the morning.
fresh. You're gonna look
And
so
I will
fresh.
probably fall asleep on the table
It's the
because
best.
I've done that the last couple times. So
Yeah.
you know what? A little mid-morning nap. I'm looking forward to that. What about you?
That
What are you looking forward to?
sounds amazing. Okay, it sounds way more relaxing than what I'm looking forward to, which is what's going to raise my blood pressure. But friends, you know what I'm going to say. If you follow college football, you know that Penn State plays Oregon, and College Game Day is in Happy Valley, and it's a whiteout, and it's just such a delightful little bit of PA for this moved down south girl. So I'm so excited for that game. We're probably going to watch that. And I think Georgia and Alabama play. So in my husband's office, he has 2 TVs stacked. So we're going to do 2 TV football tomorrow night, which feels like a win. The other thing that people may want to, put a little reminder in your phone on tomorrow night, Nashville Predators will be in action. They are playing Tampa Bay, puck drop 6 p.m. This is a road game. Sunday, 6 p.m., Nashville Predators are going to be playing Carolina in Carolina as well. So back-to-back games on the road. Emma, do you think we will see veterans for Nashville in these 2 back-to-back games? Or is this going to be a situation where these 2 games are more about kind of paring down the roster and also your next man up list?
I think I don't know. I think you may see some veterans just I don't know. I mean, you look at Thursday night, they had the Gold Star showcase and none of the veterans played. I mean, literally none of them.
None.
So I think and that makes sense. I don't disagree with that that logic. But I think maybe you see some guys. Again, it's travel, it's a lot of travel, even though they're there and back in one day. Um I, we might, but I think that the fact that we saw like all the veterans play in the first 3 preseason games that were in Nashville means that there are certain guys like I don't know if we see Roman Josi again.
Yeah.
I don't know if we see Philip Forsberg again. It's like guys that are important to your team and you don't want to, risk anything happening to them if you don't have to. So, maybe, but maybe not.
Yeah. Well, if we're going to be heading down to Predators practice today, we'll ask Andrew Brunette what the lineup may look like on this road trip, and we'll tweet it out at LO_Predators. So we'll keep you in the loop. It's going to be interesting to see what the Predators do with these 2 road games as far as what the focus is. Is it going to be working on line chemistry with veterans? Is it going to be really focusing on how are we ranking these younger players? So we're going to keep our eye on that. On Monday's show, we're going to bring you all of the details. We may even bust out one word, just like preseason practice, one word for the weekend games. So tune in on Monday.
We need a preseason too, we get
do.
our
Yeah.
get warm, get loose.
Yeah. I've had my preseason grilled cheese, friends, and it was as great as I remembered. So check that out.
And that's really what matters. So
really what matters. Yeah. So tune in Monday. We're going to stretch our one word muscles. It makes sense in context, and let you know what we saw over the weekend, players that stood out, what we noticed about this Nashville Predators team, and any new information we may have on, I don't know, any contracts being signed. Still waiting. Yeah. Before we log off on this Friday, Emma, will you let everyone know where they can find you and your work?
You can find me falling asleep, getting my facial. You can also find me on social media at Emma_Lingan, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
You can find me dressed all in white. Even though I'm not at Beaver Stadium, I'm still going to participate in the whiteout. You can find me on social media at AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work with Penalty Box Radio as well. Friends, that is going to do it for this Friday edition of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We hope you all have a fabulous weekend. We'll see you here on Monday.